Inequality does not hurt you because you have less. It hurts you because you can see who has more. That distinction is not a minor psychological footnote. It is the mechanism. It is how inequality does most of its damage, not through the absolute deprivation of the bottom, but through the relentless visibility of the distance between where you are and where others are. Humans are not calibrated for absolute conditions. They are calibrated for relative ones. The body that feels safe in a poor village feels poor in a wealthy city, even when its material conditions have improved. The suffering is real. The cause is the distance, not the deprivation. This matters because it means inequality is not primarily an economic problem. It is a biological one. The stress response activated by low social status is the same stress response activated by physical threat. Chronic exposure to it produces the same physiological consequences as chronic exposure to danger. Elevated cortisol, suppressed immune function, shortened telomeres, accelerated aging. The epidemiologist Richard Wilkinson spent decades documenting this across countries and across decades. More unequal societies have worse health outcomes at every income level, not just at the bottom, at every level. The middle of an unequal society is sicker than the middle of an equal one, even when their absolute incomes are the same. Inequality makes everyone worse off, except those at the very top, including the people who are not at the bottom. Now look at what inequality actually is before asking where it comes from or what it does. Inequality is a measure of distance. The distance between what the person at the top of a distribution has and what the person at the bottom has, in income, in wealth, in access, in options, in the time and attention available to live a life rather than simply service its costs. These are related but not identical. Income inequality, the gap in what people earn, is large in most modern economies and has been growing for 40 years. Wealth inequality, the gap in what people own, is vastly larger and grows faster because wealth generates returns that compound while income is spent on living. The distinction between income and wealth is one of the most important and least examined in public economic discourse. A person earning a high salary is not wealthy in the structural sense unless they convert that income into assets. The doctor earning $200,000 a year and spending $190,000 is not accumulating wealth. The person inheriting a portfolio generating the same $200,000 in dividends and spending $50,000 is. Their income appears equivalent in the data. Their trajectories are completely different. In one generation, the high earner's children start from nothing. The inheritor's children start from something that has been growing the entire time. This is why wealth inequality is self-reinforcing in a way that income inequality is not. Wealth generates returns. Returns become wealth. Wealth is passed to children who did nothing to create it. The distance compounds across generations, not because the wealthy work harder or think better, but because the arithmetic of compound returns operates silently and continuously on whatever stock of assets is already present. Thomas Piketty's central finding was that when the return on capital exceeds the rate of economic growth, which is the normal condition of most of history, wealth concentrates automatically, not through corruption, not through theft, through the ordinary operation of compound returns in a growing but not infinitely growing economy. The math produces the outcome. The outcome is inequality increasing until something interrupts it. What has historically interrupted it has not been gradual reform. It has been war, plague, revolution, or political upheaval severe enough to destroy accumulated wealth and force redistribution. The mid-20th century period of relative equality in wealthy nations was not the natural state of capitalism working well. It was the consequence of 2 world wars destroying accumulated wealth, the Great Depression delegitimizing the existing order, the rise of organized labor, extracting a larger share of productivity gains for workers, and tax regimes that actively prevented the reconcentration of wealth at the top. When those forces weakened, when unions declined, when top marginal tax rates fell, when capital became more mobile than regulation, the underlying tendency toward concentration reasserted itself. The decades of relative equality were the exception. The concentration is the default. Now look at what inequality does to the systems around it. Because inequality is not just a distributional fact. It is a political force. Concentrated wealth is concentrated political power. Not through bribery in the crude sense, though that exists. Through the subtler mechanisms that shape what is thinkable, what is speakable, what appears on the agenda of political debate, and what does not. The wealthy fund think tanks that produce the intellectual frameworks through which policy is discussed. They own the media through which public opinion is formed. They employ the lobbyists who write the technical details of legislation that legislators rarely read in full. They fund the political campaigns of those who make decisions about taxation, regulation, and the rules of the economic game. None of this requires conspiracy. It requires only that people with resources use those resources to protect and extend their interests, which is what people with resources do. The outcome is a political system that is formally democratic. Everyone votes. Everyone has theoretically equal political rights, and functionally oligarchic, in that the preferences of the wealthy are translated into policy at rates that vastly exceed the preferences of everyone else. The Princeton political scientists Martin Gylens and Benjamin Page studied this directly. They found that the preferences of average Americans have near-zero independent influence on policy outcomes when they diverge from the preferences of economic elites. Democracy is the form. Oligarchy is the substance. This is the feedback loop that makes inequality so durable. Inequality produces political power. Political power produces rules that protect and extend inequality. The rules produce more inequality. The cycle is not inevitable. It has been interrupted before, but it requires active, sustained political effort to interrupt. And that effort must be organized by people who have less time, less money, less access, and less influence than those organizing to prevent it. Here is the insight that rarely surfaces in these conversations. Inequality is not just about what people have. It is about what people can imagine. A society of high inequality is a society in which the range of what seems possible is different, depending on where you start. The child born into wealth moves through a world in which college is assumed, professional networks are inherited, failure is recoverable, and risk is affordable. The child born into scarcity moves through a world in which college is a gamble. Professional networks must be built from nothing. Failure can be catastrophic, and risk is a luxury. The decisions each child makes will look different. The outcomes will look different, and the difference will be attributed by the dominant culture to individual merit and individual choice. This is the ideological function of meritocracy. It takes outcomes produced by a structured system and attributes them to individual qualities. It makes inequality feel earned. The person at the top deserves to be there. The person at the bottom deserves to be there. The structure disappears. What remains is a story about personal virtue and personal failure that protects the structure from scrutiny by making it invisible. The meritocracy story is not entirely false. Within any given structural position, choices matter. Effort matters. Skill matters. Two people starting from the same circumstances will not end in the same place. The individual is not irrelevant, but the meritocracy story is structurally false. The circumstances people start from are not equal. The return on equivalent effort is not equal. The cost of equivalent failure is not equal. Running the same race with different weights is not a fair test of speed. Calling the outcome a measure of merit requires not looking at the weights. Now bring this into the actual texture of where you live. Walk the geography of any major city and inequality is immediately visible. The neighborhood with the good schools and the well-maintained streets and the thriving shops and the absence of visible distress. The neighborhood nearby where the schools are under-resourced and the streets are not maintained, and the shops are pawnbrokers and payday lenders, and the bodies of people carry the physical evidence of chronic stress. These are not different because of the choices made by the people who live in them. They are different because of decades of investment and disinvestment, of property values compounding upward in some places and stagnating in others, of public resources following property tax revenue, of risk being priced into the geography of daily life in ways that reproduce themselves across generations. You feel inequality in your body before you think it in your mind. In the quality of the air, in the time it takes to get from where you are to where opportunity is, in whether the food available nearby is fresh or processed, in whether the streets feel safe enough to walk at night, in how much cognitive and emotional energy is consumed simply by the management of conditions that more fortunate lives do not have to manage. This is where inequality actually lives. Not in the abstract ratio between the top and the bottom. In the tissue of daily experience, in the energy available for living after the energy required for survival has been spent. The distance is real. The visibility of the distance is real. And the question that stays open after all of this is not political in the first instance. It is personal. You move through an unequal world every day. You see the distance. You feel your position in it. You make decisions about where to live, what to pursue, what to compare yourself to, what to believe is possible for you, that are shaped by that position in ways you may not have fully examined. The comparison that makes you feel lacking, is it telling you something true about your life, or is it showing you the distance and asking you to experience it as personal failure? Those are not the same thing. But in a world designed to make them feel identical, telling them apart is one of the quieter forms of freedom available to you.